Showdown between Blue and Baptist, the healthcare provider and the health insurance company, finally coming to a last-minute agreement. We're getting reaction from Mayor Donna Deegan on that development and the new budget just taking effect in the city. Plus, updates on development projects, including the new Museum of Science and History and the city's big-time investment there. First, the hurricane damage hitting home all across the southeastern United States. Our interview with Florida's chief financial officer on recovery and what Hurricane Helene could mean in the property insurance crisis. All on This Week in Jacksonville. Thanks for joining us today. Hurricane Helene made landfall in Florida at the end of September as a Category 4 storm, and it delivered catastrophic damage both through winds and water. And now communities across Florida, Georgia, and the other southeastern states, they are in cleanup mode. I spoke this week with Florida CFO Jimmy Petronas, whose office is working to help people recover.
So we're in St. Petersburg here in Pinellas County. This part of the state was devastated by flooding. It wasn't as much of a wind event as a flood event. When you drive in the neighborhoods here in St. Pete, you see mounds and mounds and mounds of belongings on the sidewalks. And it's what y'all experienced with Hurricane Irma. You know, that flood event that parts of Northeast Florida had felt, and people lose their belongings. So it's horrific. You know, people have lost their furniture, photo albums, you name it, as the bands off of Hurricane Helene historic storm surge event here in Pinellas County in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, the size and scope of the storm and the impact of it, obviously we're seeing it so much in our state. We're seeing it in other states across the Southeast as well. Tell us what you're doing as insurance commissioner, obviously the CFO, but there's an insurance village and you're opening it up. What does that do for folks who've been affected?
Sure. So we plead with people to not sign anything. There's no reason why you need to sign anything with anybody. If we ask them, come to our insurance village, we'll have about 40 different insurance companies there. And this will be an opportunity for you to sit across from your insurance carrier. And in some cases, people don't even know who their policy is with or what their coverage is with. So this kind of helps our team. We'll have our folks there. We'll have every insurance company that does business in the state, at least the ones that have the significant market share. And it's face-to-face meetings. And the insurance carriers know that at our village, their expectation is to write checks. So this is a way somebody can get some sustainment money, some stabilizing money to get a hotel room, maybe secure a lease, because in some cases their houses are inhabitable. So there's going to be a lot of, of stripping a sheetrock and clean as that family will need to rebuild their home and dry it out.
So I may have lived somewhere in Florida that didn't have direct impact by this storm, but automatically I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to affect my insurance rates against the crisis is so close to us? What does that look like for people who live state?
So the silver lining in this particular storm, now hurricane season is not over. Silver lining is this storm is not a Hurricane Ian, okay? Hurricane Ian generated 770,000 insurance claims. Over $20 billion of the B was paid out just in insurance. So this particular storm, the most significant damage took place up in the Big Bend of Florida. And unfortunately, that part of the state has had 3 storms and a round of tornadoes in the last 12 months. So a lot of devastation has already taken place. But in comparison, so far with Helene, we've got about 40,000 insurance claims. In comparison, Ian generated almost 800,000 insurance claims. So less damage, less impact. Now, what you'll have through here, there'll be a lot of flood claims. A lot of those will go through the NFIP. That's the National Flood Insurance Program. That's a federal government-backed program. So that should not have a direct impact on your cost of business for your insurance, since a lot of these will not be what are called windstorm claims where your roof has been peeled off because this was a storm surge event.
Yeah. Silver lining, but still just a disaster, another terrible
Still
natural
painful
disaster. And we look at how many lives were lost, not just in Florida, but in other places. And one of the things that we've talked about in the last year, because you're also the state fire marshal, is these EV fires, electric vehicles. And when you have flood waters come in, water and batteries, electricity, they don't really mix very well, do they?
No, they don't. So it's called a thermal runaway. As these batteries, as a charged lithium-ion battery, it'll burn underwater. So there's some videos that have been going viral. EVs in garage. The garage was flooded, and the next thing you know, the EV catches fire, and then the house catches on fire. But this is also with golf carts, with scooters, with e-bikes. So you want to be incredibly careful that your devices that may be lithium-ion powered, if they were subject to saltwater storm flooding, you need to dispose of those things in a proper manner. If you've got an EV, start that insurance claim as soon as possible and let that tow truck take it to a safe place for disposal. But we've had, at this point, 6 EVs that have caught fire and about 16 lithium-ion battery-related fires just so far from Hurricane Helene in the Tampa Bay area.
I'll never forget walking through some of the damage with you after Hurricane Michael a few years ago. This is a different sort of damage that we're seeing in many places because of flooding, not that wind damage, that catastrophic wind damage that we saw with Michael. So parts of Florida have sustained that kind of damage. What would you say to anybody affected, whether it's wind damage or floodwaters or what have you, about trying not to get caught up in fraud, because there are those scamsters out there looking for people right now?
I've told people, if you sign anything, and look, there are good, legitimate businesses out there that work in the storm recovery space. But in the first initial 24, 48 hours, a lot of bad characters come out of the woodwork. If you sign anything, your whole goal is to get well, to rehab, to get your money, rebuild your house. I tell people, if you sign anything, you'll be perpetually living in the hospital. You will never get well, because those predators, their whole goal is to tie up your insurance claim. They're going to sign you up, let you twist in the wind, and they're going to wait so this thing goes to court and they can get some type of a windfall. Again, it's unfortunate this happens. Insurance companies are no saints, okay? I know they've got to be held accountable, but this is what we do for a living. We make sure the insurance company pays your money. And I tell people, at any time, you can hire an attorney. At any time, you can hire a public adjuster. But let the state of Florida do its job. Let us help you get your money without paying anybody.
And I asked CFO Petronas about connecting to some of those resources he's talking about. He said, hey, 2 easy ways. We've got them on the screen for you right now. You can call the phone number that you see right there, 1-877-MY-FL-CFO, or you go online, same ad, it's myfloridacfo.com. All right, still ahead, Mayor Donna Deegan. We're going to get her reaction to the agreement between Baptist Health and Florida Blue and what that means for city workers. That's part of our conversation next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
And in studio today, Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan. We were just talking with the state CFO about hurricane relief. And we just found out kind of late in the week that there was a toddler that died in Jacksonville because of Hurricane Helene, a tree that fell on a mobile home and took a life here. How would you describe to folks the impact of the hurricane, and maybe even what's well and what the city can improve on in terms of the hurricane?
Well, let me just say, and I said it before, but I think the collaborative effort that goes on in this city when we're preparing for these storms is amazing. I think our emergency preparedness folks, led by Andre Ayub, just do an incredible. JEA did an incredible job. We had almost 300 trees down that we know of, many of which fell on power lines and into power poles and broke them and caused all sorts of problems down the line. And as you know, that tree falling was what took the life of that toddler, unfortunately. But we were very grateful we were not in the center of that storm, but even hundreds of miles away, we had quite the impact, really. So lots still being worked on. Fortunately, I think most everybody has their power back, aside from maybe a couple of people, and we're moving through it. But there was a lot. There was a lot, Kent, for considering what we had to deal with, as opposed to nothing compared to what they dealt with in Perry or up in the Carolinas. But really a tough time.
Yeah, I noticed this last week. You talked about the gratitude for first responders and JEA and the Public Works Department.
JSO, everybody just pulled together.
Are there things you think the city could do better?
Well, there's always things you can do better, right?
Okay.
I mean, I think, and I'll start with me. I think anytime you can communicate better, is. And I think all of us are doing the best we can to get out the best information, and that requires a give and take, not only with the community but with the folks in those departments. But I think think all things considered, I mean, we'll all get together and we'll do an analysis of how everything went. But I think all things considered, we did pretty well. There was a lot going on in a short period of time. That storm moved very fast.
Yeah.
And to be able to move through that with all the damage that we had and get the power back on as quickly as we did. I know for some people, we were without power for 18 hours. I know there were people who were without power for several days. But when you look at the damage this storm really wrought in other areas, I mean, they'll be out of power for weeks. I think we've done a good job.
Let me ask about this. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is saying this week they can meet immediate needs, but they're not going to have enough funding to make it through hurricane season. How could that potentially impact Jacksonville, or do you think that the federal government would come through no matter what?
I do. I think you've seen an incredible response. If you listen to every governor that's been impacted in the Carolinas, if you listen to the mayors, the response has been robust and really on point. I know that President Biden was in Florida on Thursday to survey the damage here and has pledged every resource that is needed here. And so I have every faith that folks will be taken care of. And it is a difficult situation. The damage is widespread, but I think that the response has been pretty robust.
Mayor, you've talked about infrastructure needs for the city, and that's been a goal since you started campaigning, saying we've got to fix some things. When it comes to potential flooding, and we see areas of the city that, boy, it's flooded again there, and that kind of thing. Are there places where the city needs to step in now and say, we're done waiting, we're going to fix some of those issues?
Well, we're doing that, Kent. I mean, we're right on target in terms of our spend and our projects to fix those infrastructure needs. The issue is that, you know, what we're really going to have to do is look long term at what places do we need to not only fix, but what do we need to sort of from building closer to the water, or what places do we need to try to incentivize developers to go to and perhaps not build in other areas. So you've got two things going. And this is one of the things that is happening right now that I'm very excited about. You know about the 50-year resiliency plan. Well, we're in the middle of a 2-year process of creating that compound flood model that lets us know exactly street by street, timeline by timeline, where we're going to flood in the city. I just had a long meeting with Ann Colanesi and her team the other day. It's exciting stuff. Not only forecast flooding in real time, but it will inform our decisions in terms of where do we need to incentivize development and where do we need to disincentivize development in order to help us not flood so badly in the future, and to protect homes, to make sure that people can get insured for their property because they're in a place that isn't likely to flood.
But Ken Knight Drive is one of those areas where, boy, there's not much that can be done there.
Well, there
it seems
isn't.
Like.
So for instance, you know, in San Marco, we have this robust pump station that's about to go online at the beginning of the year. It's a $40 million spend to make sure that we can try to keep that area a little more flood free. But when you talk about someplace like Ken Knight Drive, the whole geography of that area is such that pumps wouldn't do you any over there. So we have tried many times to try to buy those properties from the folks over there. Some have sold. Some folks just don't want to go. But there's not a lot we can do in those areas besides move people out of harm's way. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. We want to identify where is the next Ken Knight Drive, and how can we say to people, this is not the place you want to build. You want to build, you know, on higher ground.
You give people choices, but giving them that information, and then there's informed choices are kind of on them. Before we get to a commercial break, I do want to talk about, you know, it went down to the deadline, but Florida Blue and Baptist Health, they finally came together, resolved their differences, I suppose. But you had mentioned, hey, this has to happen because city employees are really going to be hurt if there wasn't an agreement, and you gave up your chief of staff to help work on this issue. So does Darnell Smith come back to the city to work for you in these next few months?
Well, to be clear, it wasn't just city employees that were impacted, but we had a lot of city employees that were impacted. We were hearing from folks who had surgery scheduled and things that just weren't sure if they were going to be able to have those. And I think it was a scary situation for a lot of people. I'm very grateful that the two sides came together and came to an agreement that will make sure that everybody, you know, on those plans can continue to be covered. The only exception, from what I understand, is plan that is not going to be part of that plan, which they have given, from my understanding, a 30-day extension to make sure that people understand they're going to have to transition to something else. So we will obviously, when we come back to ACA enrollment here very shortly, we will continue to try to push people toward plans that they can use. But that was the only disappointing part for me. I wish that had not happened. But beyond that, it looks like, thank goodness, we have a solution there. As far as Darnell is concerned, we have loved having him at the city. He's been a real game changer for us. But he did have to go back to Florida Blue to get that done, and thank goodness he did. And we just felt at the end of the day that since we were coming up so close on the end of the year, it wouldn't make. We had installed Mike Weinstein, who has stepped in and has really worked with us right along, given what we were doing with the stadium. And so Mike stepped in, and Mike, where he is as chief of staff, and Darnell's going to go back to Florida Blue a little bit early, because to have him come back for a month or two and then transition back, it was too frenetic. But we loved having him. He was amazing and a tremendous asset.
Yep. Incredible community leader. So thank you for that, and stay with us, and you stay with us as well as we continue the visit with Mayor Deegan. We're talking about the new budget. Where could be making a difference in the city in the years to come? That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan with us. A new fiscal year is underway now, and you told us that you were fighting for some things here. Guaranteed raises for first responders, changes to some of their retirement options for city employees, and then working out a way to do what the state demands when it comes to some of our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. How do you feel about the new budget, and what's the impact it's going to make?
Well, first of all, really grateful to be through the process, and you know, it's always just great fun, but really important stuff, and I appreciated the work of my staff and the council to get it to fruition. But we were able to guarantee those raises for our first responders, which was really important. Return to them the option of a defined pension, which we thought was very important for recruitment, and are already hearing from JSO that it has made just an absolutely tremendous difference in terms of their number of recruits, that they're able to, that the interest now in JSO and the people applying to be part of that department has jumped exponentially.
The sheriff, and you had relayed also that it was a barrier to recruiting and bringing people in.
It was the number one thing I heard from both of them, from both the firefighters and the police, that this is causing us to not only bleed people that we can't lose, but to not be able to recruit people and retain people. And already we're seeing the fruits of that before it was even approved. When people saw that the deal had been done, that the numbers started to move, and we're still seeing that. So we're very happy about that. In terms of complying with the state law, we have started the first part of that process. We have a JFRD team. That we have a leader of that team that is putting together that outreach to make sure that we can get people to the services they need. So right now what's happening is they're working with JSO to create that initial touch to people of saying, hey, the state law is in place. You're not going to be able to be out here on the streets. We're going to find a place for you. We're going to create the services for you that you need, and we're going to move through that. So we're in the process of that now. There are no penalties for this law until January 1st. So the goal is to have everything moving like a well-oiled machine by then. We do need more funds. But what will happen is, as we move through the process, the committee will go in and report to council, here's what we're doing, here's the resources that we think we need, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to go forward that way. But it's a process, but it is moving forward.
Change topics just a little bit here. Automation and wages are really at the heart of a strike that's going on by tens of thousands of members of the International Longshoremen's Association, or the ILA. What do you think about this? Because Jacksonville Port said, hey, maybe about a third of our businesses are going to be affected by this.
Yeah, I know that Jacksport has expressed support for the ILA and has said that they're looking forward to having this done. They're not part of the negotiations in Jacksport, but are waiting for all this to happen. The protests so far have been very peaceful, and I know that everybody's hopeful for a solution very soon. But you're right, about 2/3 of our business is on track, and the rest they're dealing with. But from my understanding, things have gone pretty smoothly out there so far with this process. I, of course, am a believer in collective bargaining, and I hope that they come to an agreement soon.
Jacksport, as you mentioned, not in the negotiations.
No.
The city, not in the negotiations. Is there any influence that you or others would have on trying to help them come to an agreement?
Well, look, I think they have negotiators in place that are doing that, and they're not here. This is not one of the areas where the negotiations are happening. But I think you have articulated the issues very, very clearly. I think the automation is at the heart of it, and I think at some point they'll come to a happy medium and get there.
Mayor, before we go, let me show some video. Here's a new Museum of Science and History coming to the North Bank here.
Yes.
We know there's an investment here from the city as well, some $50 million on this, paid out over 3 years. Are you excited about this? Because we keep talking about some development things happening in the city.
Oh, I'm so excited about it. I mean, it is going to be just one of those wonderful attractions that's going to continue to build on the things we're doing on the riverfront. We're going to bring more people downtown to experience what we're building here. And I'm very excited about Mosh. I think that's going to be incredible. And we're going to be seeing that hopefully complete by 2027. They're moving.
Yeah. There's a lot of things moving. And we appreciate your time this morning, Mayor.
I appreciate
Thank you for being with us. So a very special episode. Next time I'm going to have an exclusive interview with Boris Johnson, the former British Prime Minister, speaking to the River City at the end of this month. And don't forget to check out my weekly podcast, This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. The week's episode it looks at the corner at Deb's store in the city's historic East Side. And you'll be able to find new episodes every Thursday at 9 a.m. You can find them right now on News4Jax Plus under the channel This Week in Jacksonville.
Every day, more people are choosing News4Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.